Shalom, everybody, and welcome back to Insights in the Parsha of the Week, Parashat Miketz, which is also amazingly Shabbat Chanukah and amazingly Rosh Chodesh this year. Let's recap some items from this week's Parsha in connection to the end of last week's Parsha. As we know, Yosef was unjustifiably put into jail, and while in jail, there was blessings in whatever he touched, like he had the Midas touch, everything just turned to blessing. And while there, the minister of baking of the bread and the minister of the winery were of the king were both put into jail. Like Rashi says, one a stone was found in his bread, another one a fly was found in the wine cup of Paro. So they were both put to jail. While in jail, and Yosef was taking care of them because he was under the the soer, the warden's supervision. He gave everything over to Yosef. So Yosef was taking care of them. And one day he saw them both sad. They were both sad because each one had a dream with no interpretation. But at the same time, they had the interpretation of the dream of the second guy. So the minister, the sar of the Ofim, of the baker, he had a dream with no interpretation, and he was upset because of that. But he knew the interpretation of the dream of the winer of the Yenon, the Vignon, and the wine steward minister had interpretation of the dream of the other guy, of the guy, the baker, but his own dream was upside down. So they were upside because of that. And Yosef was successfully able to interpret the dreams. And when he interpreted the dream of the baker, he then asked the baker, "Please do me a favor. When you get out, please mention my name to Paro, that I'm here unlawfully, unjustly. I was put in jail here, and I don't belong here. I didn't do anything." So Rashi says, and he was punished because he put his faith in man to stay there for another 2 years. He stayed another 2 years in jail, extended because he showed a lack of faith. What was he expected to do? He was expected to wait for Hashem to save him and not to rely on flesh and blood. You would think, but he's doing ishtadlut. Still, Hashem had higher plans for him. We'll go into that soon. Then this week's parsha, Miketz, it begins with the dream of Pharaoh. That after these 2 years ended the end of Yosef's two dreams in jail. He dreamt these two scary, weird dreams of the skinny cows swallowing up the fat cows, and the skinny, dried up stalks of wheat swallowing up the healthy, good-looking stalks of wheat. And if I can just making a joke on the side, the reason why these two items is the dream of the cow is for those who are doing the keto diet, and the ones for the wheat are those who are eating carbs like regular. So that's why two dreams were needed for two food groups. But in any event, that's just a joke on the side. The thing is that Pharaoh had this dream, and he needed a good interpretation. And like Rashi says, his astrologers and huji-buji, voodoo makers, whatever you want to call them, magicians, they were giving interpretations, but Pharaoh knew that couldn't be right what they were saying, because they were giving him personal interpretations, such as you're gonna have seven daughters, and then you're gonna bury the $7. So Pharaoh, being a king of Egypt, felt it has to have general meaning for the whole people. Came along Yosef, because the baker, the minister of the bakery of the food for the king, he remembered Yosef after 2 years, and he said, "There's someone in jail who properly interpreted my dream, and exactly what happened to me happened. Exactly what happened to the wine steward minister, that's what happened to him." So they pulled him out, and Yosef was the one who successfully interpreted the dream. He's saying it's 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. So we have a few points we want to bring up just on the pshat of the parsha, and then we'll go on to the deeper level. First of all, it's kind of strange that the two guys, the two ministers in jail at the end of last week's parsha, they were upset. Why were they upset? Because they couldn't get their own interpretation of their dream, of their own dream. But they knew the interpretation of the other guy's dream. So you see the cruelty of these people. Why don't talk? Why don't you guys talk? You're in jail together. You're keeping your pain inside, and you can help the other guy. You know his interpretation of his dream. So why don't you ask him? Why don't you just open dialogue? Did you have such and such a dream last night? And he would say yes. He said, "Well, this is the meaning." And the other guy would say, "Did you have such and such a dream?" "Yes." So here's the meaning. If they would have spoken to each other, there would be no problem. They wouldn't need Yosef to interpret, but it shows you on a simple level how cruel these people were. Each one was concerned only for themselves, and that was needed. That was just to show, number one, how far they are, how wicked they were. Like Rashi points out that the wicked, their good is not complete, because only after 2 years did the baker remember Yosef, and Yosef asked him 2 years earlier to remember me. Okay, but you see the attitude of the people, these people, that they're only concerned about themselves. It's unfortunate, like people on the buses and subways today, that the main argument against anti-Semitism is people are just watching and not saying anything. When they see something, an incident on a bus, instead of even saying something, they just keep quiet and they turn back instead of doing something. So that's the idea of, like, this is the unfortunate the attitude of Sodom. The attitude of Sodom is, I come first. I myself, I'm my concern. The other guy, he can die. If, it's up to me. I don't give a hoot. And that was the attitude of these two guys in the jail. But nonetheless, it was to bring out Yosef. Okay, so we'll go into soon about Yosef's punishment. But then afterwards, when Yosef interprets the dream of Paro, look at the amazing compassion of a tzaddik. Not only does he give Paro the interpretation, the 7 fat cows is the 7 years of plenty. The 7 lean cows, 7 years of famine. The 7 fat and luscious stalks of wheat, 7 years of plenty. The 7 dried up stalks of wheat, 7 years of famine, and they're going to swallow up the good years. Velo noda ki ba'u el kirbena. You will be able to tell when the years of famine come along that there ever was years of plenty. So yes, Yosef properly interprets the dream, but he doesn't stop there. He also gives Paro advice. He says to him, you know what you have to do though? You have to appoint someone to be smart, not to waste time, not to just get carried away and off course by the abundance of the plenty of the 7 years of plenty. Let someone be appointed to gather in, because there's so much abundance. Again, people will say, we have time, and they push off things. You have to find someone who won't waste time and will just amass in the king's treasuries tons of wheat, so that'll be collateral for the years of famine. Okay, so this already is an attitude of a tzaddik. A tzaddik, not only does he know what's happening, but he also gives you advice. He gives good advice. He'll say what the problem is and then what to do. Why are tzaddikim like that? Because they have rahmanut. As opposed to the guys in the jail, they knew to help the other guy, but they didn't want to, because they're so overwhelmed with what they're going through. I come first. The other guy, I don't give a hoot. That's a bad attitude. Okay, Yosef, being a tzaddik, is someone who points out. He could have just stopped there. He could have just said to Pharaoh, okay, 7 years of famine, 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. Period. Stop. No, he kept on going. That you should know what you have to do now. So that shows his compassion. So now let's go a step further. Yosef HaTzadik, like we explained in previous classes, based on the Likutei Halachot Birkat Hoda'a Vav, he's called Yosef, Rav Nosson explains there, because he's always looking to get additional holy sparks trapped in the chambers of exchanges. This deep and amazing, scary concept of the chambers of exchanges, which in a nutshell is that the evil has in its power, its reach, to swap and steal from a person his holiness, his bounty, his bracha, and give him in exchange something less for that. And therefore the good is trapped in the domain of evil, and it's up to mankind to recollect and regain what was swapped. And this, Rav Nosson explains, based on Rabbi Nachman's teachings in the Kutei Moran, lesson 24, is by faking simcha, by trying to be happy even though things are difficult, to find a way to be happy, and that overcomes and opens up the doors that a person can extract what was taken from him. This is the role of every Jew, what they're going through on an individual level, okay? On a personal level and also on a national level. Now, Rav Nosson says there's also another point, that this is why you need tzaddikim in your life. Tzaddikim are the level of Yosef HaTzadik. He's called Yosef HaTzadik, if you notice. Yosef, he's the only one called, of the 7 shepherds, called Yosef HaTzadik. Why? Because his righteousness of Yosef, like we said, Rav Nosson said, is to look for more holiness trapped in the chambers of exchanges. Meaning what? The tzaddikim are ready for the challenge to help other people get back out, to extract what was taken from other people, to go into the chambers of exchanges, smash the evil there, and extract the holiness stuck there. That's why it's called Yosef. Rav Nosson explains, Yosef is milashon tosefet. He's always looking for additional holiness trapped and to bring it back into the side of holiness. Okay? So this is Yosef Hatzadik. These parshas show his role. Okay? His job is to go to the domain of the chambers of exchanges, which is reflected in the concept of dreams. A dream has a mixture of truth and falsehood. Like the Gemara says, there's no dream that has like additional shaf, psolet, things that you don't need. There are certain details which are true and certain details that are false. So you need a tzaddik who has a clear perception, a clear perspective, that is able to see a dream and to properly interpret it, as opposed to other people who are not at that level, that they hear a dream and they interpret it as they wish. They can even bring rabbinical sources, but who says they're explaining the dream properly? Only tzaddikim at a high caliber, who are totally free from the grasp of the chambers of exchanges, are able to go into the domain of dreamland and not be influenced by the negativity, to point out what's falsehood and what's truth and extract. So this is one of the reasons Rav Nosson explains all the concept of these dreams, the dream interpretation of the wine steward and of the baker of the king, so that Yosef should sift out and show the truth that should come to salvation. Now, to go back, why was he punished 2 years? 2 years is in order to prepare Yosef HaTzadik for interpreting the real dreams, the two dreams of Pharaoh, the dream of the cows and the dream of the stocks. For each dream, a year is needed. The word year in Hebrew is shana. Shana also is rooted to the word of shinui and meshune. Difference, changes, shinuyim. Because dream interpretation requires a person to be able to bypass all the distortions and changes in the dream and able to go in. So on one hand, Yosef was punished for another 2 years because he lacked faith. That's the simple reason. But ultimately, everything that Hashem does for a person is for the good. The real reason why Hashem stalled Yosef another 2 years is to build him up to be the one who can properly interpret the two dreams of Pharaoh. That's why 2 years. Even Yosef, when he told Pharaoh why the dream twice, he used the word for years. V'al hishanot hachalom, and the reason why the dream was doubled was mentioned twice, once in the format of cows, once in the format of stalks of wheat. So Yosef himself used the word shinui, which two. It's also the number two also is shnaim, which is related to shinui, and year shana also. So there you have it. 2 years. Each year also shinui, a difference. In other words, the changes which are in interpretations of the dreams. Because dreams, Rav Nosson said, is when a person is not there. A person is experiencing 1/60th of death when he's sleeping, because it's like a type of death, and death is considered sadness. So when a person is sleeping, there is really 1/60th of an experience of death and sadness. But tzaddikim, when they sleep, their dreams are so pure and holy. The dreams of tzaddikim are the concept of just simcha. There's no death when tzaddikim dream and sleep. They're experiencing life. Just like it says that the tzaddikim, when they pass on, they're considered alive. So too, when tzaddikim dream, they're also in a live status. Even though their eyes are closed and they're dreaming, but still they're not experiencing the 1/60th of death, which is sadness. That's what tzaddikim, when they dream, they have amazing visions. They can see prophecies, etc. when they were sleeping. So now going back to Yosef, he was now able to go into the dreamland, which is the epitome of representation of the chambers of exchanges, to go in and extract and bring out the goodness. This is reflected in his interpretations of the dreams of Pharaoh, and earlier by the baker and the wine steward. All this to bring Yosef to his true status, to become the viceroy. The Sheni Lamelech, Sheni also, Sheni. It says, Pharaoh says, you'll be second to me again. Because the word Sheni again is related to Shinui. Second means the difference is the changes. Because you're such an amazing dream interpreter, so you show that you have authority and power over the chambers of exchanges. Paro, being the king of Egypt, a place of immorality, of impurity, the place where the chambers of exchanges, fooling people, run rampant, Yosef was able to rule over it. That was also reflected in the Parsha, where all the people who stored wheat and listened to the forthcoming warning of Joseph that there's going to be 7 years of famine, so everybody should store up grains. So they listened to him. Those who listened, what happened to all the grain stored by other people? It all went rotten. And then when they came to Yosef saying, we have no food, we stored, we listened to you, everything went rotten. So then he said, circumcise. Rashi brings all this. Circumcise? What? You got to be out of your mind. And they went to the Pharaoh and they're complaining. He's telling us to circumcise in order to give wheat. So then Pharaoh, Rashi says all this. Pharaoh said to the Egyptians, and why didn't you store wheat like he said to do? And they said, we did, but it went rotten. So then when that happened, the king said, Lechod Yosef, go to Yosef, whatever he says, do. Meaning, if he says to circumcise, listen to him. Because if he can decree that our wheat goes bad, what if he decrees on us to die? So that we're in his hands totally. What's the idea? Why would also Yosef want from Gentiles to circumcise? What do you gain from that? So there's a few explanations. Number one is again Yosef being the master of extraction from the chambers of exchanges, which is represented by Egypt. So him getting the goyim to circumcise, and the foreskin is also an orla, is considered a covering up, preventing truth to be revealed. Just like in the organ of the human organ, the orla, the foreskin, covers up the real organ itself of the brit, of the genital or reproductive organ. So too, the idea is that holiness and truth is covered up by evil and fooling apparatus, fooling application in the chambers of exchanges. So Yosef, number one, wanted to help elevate, to upgrade the level of morality of the goyim. So he said, first stage is I want you guys to do circumcision, get removing the foreskin. Even though this means nothing towards you converting to Judaism, we're not interested in that, but still as an help to make the platform cleaner for ability to have clarity in the chambers of exchanges, having people connect to their lost items, to be who they really are, and not to live a fooling imaginary existence and a sad existence because things were taken away. So that was his initial intent for the Gentiles to do circumcision. Number two, the idea that all the Gentiles in Egypt being circumcised would be a preparation that when the Jewish people, the son Jacob and his sons, would come from Israel to Egypt, they wouldn't feel segregated. They wouldn't feel like totally outcast, because everybody there would be circumcised, and circumcision is the main difference between the Jews and non-Jews of the time. Like Yosef, Jacob's sons, said to Shechem and Hamor back then in the Parsha Vayishev, Vayishlach ki cherpa hilanu. They say you guys have to circumcise also because it's considered a disgrace to us. So now that the Jews would come to a place where everybody is circumcised, they would feel comfortable, even though they were in exile in Egypt. And again, their job also, with the help of Yosef, was to extract holiness stuck in Egypt from the time of Adam, believe it or not. So all this is the extraction point to help for all this to happen. So this is now the deeper meaning of what Yosef is doing in the Parsha. His job in the Parsha is to extract holiness. And the big point for us is to tell a person that if you are stuck in life, if you're having difficulties, okay, if now the chamber of exchanges is now making you sad, stuck in a rut, negative, full of despair and futility, and you feel you're getting nowhere, your answer is to find a tzaddik, a true tzaddik at the caliber of Yosef HaTzaddik, who with his advice, his prayers, his merit, have the power to help extract you, help lift you up to a platform where you're given the right advice what to do, that you on your own can get out completely and fully from the chambers of exchanges. This is possibly one of the biggest, most beautiful messages of the Parsha, and that Yosef HaTzaddik, rising from slavery, and he's fit to be a king, Yosef. Yaakov was waiting for Yosef to be born. Because Yosef, Reverend Nosson explains, he's the flame. The Pasuk says Yaakov is the fire. Yaakov will be a fire, and Yosef will be a flame, and Esav will be straw burnt by the flames of Yosef. So Yosef without Yaakov can't do the job. Yaakov without Yosef can't do the job. It's a tag team of Yaakov and Yosef. Yaakov is the steadfast, solid foundation of the Torah. Torah Emet, that's the idea of Jacob. He's called Emet. And Torah is also called Emet. And Yosef, like we said, is the additional Torah hidden and stuck in the domain of evil, the chambers of exchanges, which the real purpose of creation is to get that. This also explains why in these last generations before Mashiach, the Jewish people are so messed up. We were never in this situation. 500, 600 years ago, the Jews were in exile, if it was in Europe, if it was in North Africa, in Spain, but the Jews more or less were religious. It's only these last 200, 300 years that the Jews now became secular, and we have inroads of blemishing, ruining simple Jewish faith and tradition, and it's all messed up now. And why? In order that the Jews now are being exposed to the final levels of holiness trapped in the chambers of exchanges, and they're going to have to go through a roller coaster experience, whether on a national level, whether on a personal level, in order to extract. But that's the level of Yosef. We need Yosef the Tzaddik to help us in these last generations. Rav Nosson writes this many times, that today the only hope for Jewish people to come out of exile, whether it's personal or national, is coming close to tzaddikim. True tzaddikim, at the caliber of Yosef HaTzaddik, will have the ability to help us go in and extract. And the main advice of the tzaddikim, believe it or not, is simcha, joy. Going back to Yosef, it says that when he was in the house of Potiphar and also in jail, he was ish matzliach. He was a successful man. And the Midrash explains what does it mean matzliach. He was always singing tunes. He was always happy and dancing. Yosef was happy that even though he was a slave, he was in jail and everything, he was happy about his beard, his peyot, that he had a brit milah, circumcision. He was happy about his good points and was strong enough to enable him to be happy and then to extract. Proof being, he became who he became, the viceroy in Egypt, showing his level of status, what he did. And the message for us is we need tzaddikim of this caliber to shine us this light. This is why, if we can just finish off of this, normally 99% of the time, Parashat Miketz falls in Chanukah, Shabbat Chanukah, because the whole idea of Chanukah is shining light in the darkness. Which darkness? Not just the darkness of exile, fine, and not only your personal darkness, but the darkness due to the chambers of exchanges, which are making you feel trapped, stuck, futile, sad, and depressed, feeling empty and meaningless, lacking meaning. This is the idea of lighting the candles in Chanukah, okay? That we're shining this light, that there's hope, that there's what to be happy about, and we can turn the darkness into light. And now the Parsha Miketz, which talks about Yosef HaTzaddik's caliber of being able to extract, this is Dafka mentioned and read in the Shabbat of Chanukah to show us that this is the goal. You need help. On your own, it's difficult. To tell someone, oh, be happy, be happy, be happy, it's not easy. You need a boost. Where do you get the boost from? From the tzaddikim, the true tzaddikim, who have in their words and their teachings the skill, the ability to connect to every single person in the world, to relate to them, and then to give them advice and meaning and hope, Torah, to lift them up. Shabbat Shalom, and may we be zochet to always use the utilities given to us by Yosef HaTzaddik and the tzaddikim of that level. Shabbat Shalom, Umbrach.